So this topic is going to be a touchy one, I think, for many people. I don't understand why, and I'll explain that in a minute. But boy, are people very, very strongly tied to their perspective of this topic, one side or the other. Let me start by telling you that I spent time on the top floor of Trump Tower with Donald in his office, totally naked. How many of you can say that? What? I'll get to why in a minute. Let me backtrack. So I've known Trump for quite some time, years before I was on Celebrity Apprentice. Trump was a very, very interested person with respect to Survivor. I don't know why. I won't, I'll speculate. When I won the original season, was someone that was garnering quite a bit of attention. And I think Trump liked to be around people who were getting attention because Trump likes attention. So I spent time with him at many different places. I worked for the CBS Early Show, stayed in the Plaza, which was across the street from the building that he owned. We would see each other occasionally when I'd go into work in the morning. We would talk, say hey. We would encounter each other in all kinds of settings in New York. I sat with him and his family at finales for Survivor, at the Woolman Ice Rink that he owned. Trump invited me to sit on the dais at his roast at the Friars Club, and I did, which is a pretty big deal. We interacted. We had several conversations. I felt as if I were getting to know him. And certainly, as you know, as an observer of people that I am, I was intrigued by who is this person? Who is he really? What is this dynamic that I'm watching as he interacts with people? And so I felt as if I had a pretty good handle on who is this businessman, who is this guy. But come Celebrity Apprentice, when I got asked to do the show, I did it and met an entirely new Donald Trump. I learned then that he was contemplating running for president. And the switch between how he had interacted with me once and how he began to interact with me during this period was amazing. It was a really, really definitive, intriguing switch. He was still the same Donald that I had met and spent time with over those years prior to Celebrity Apprentice, when we were just hanging out, when the scenes weren't being filmed that he knew would air. He was jovial and interactive and playful and positive. He is incredibly adept interpersonally. It's hard when I look at him on TV now and he looks so stilted at times. He can't read a speech smoothly. He can't come up with words that make sense oftentimes. He misspeaks, etc. None of that happened when he engaged interpersonally, one-on-one, in person. He's incredibly smooth, incredibly adept, as I said. But one of the most disturbing things about anyone I've ever encountered, I encountered with him. I've watched him pivot instantaneously without regard for the people with whom he might have been talking seconds earlier. So, for example, he might have said one thing to this person, shifted to this person, and said the exact opposite thing. Worse, I'll use my example, he might be engaging with me the way we'd built a relationship for years, and then instantaneously, as the camera was turned on, he would switch to promoting this idea that he didn't like my lifestyle, or that he was somehow off-put by who I am, or that communicating this idea to what I now know was what he hoped would eventually be the base of his political movement. And he was adopting for the cameras what he believed he had to be. This whole idea of being religious, for example, he's not. This has been created just for his followers. What's hardest for me, what's most difficult, people could do what they want, is the idea that there are people who hold sincere beliefs about all kinds of things, and they are being used by him in a way that I don't think they're aware. Maybe some are, but many aren't. Many believe that he holds the same beliefs they hold, which is why they follow him. He doesn't. So you can probably tell where I'm headed with respect to what I think of this guy. But let me go back to the story of being naked with him. So I was hosting Live with Regis, and we decided to do a skit in which I rode the elevator in Trump Tower naked to the top, which is where his office is, came out of the elevator, past his receptionist, into his office, buck naked. And I walked up to him, and he put his arm around me, and he showed me, pointing it out and talking to me, all of the buildings outside his window at the top of Trump Tower across New York City that he owned. And if he were being honest, he owns a lot of them, because he was pointing to a lot of buildings. So that was a powerful, interesting moment to be thinking about now, looking back, having stood naked with the now President of the United States, kind of as he pointed out the things that he owned in the city. So we had a comfortable relationship. But all that switched during Celebrity Apprentice when his tone switched and when he was in the mode of recruiting followers. Clearly, an intentional decision he made based on who he thought he would get most support from. And I have issues with that. I understand that there are people who like some of his policies. I understand that there are people who have bought into the idea that he is trying to do good things for us. Personally, I don't believe that's the case. Personally, I have known him sufficiently to say that what I believe is he's doing what he thinks is best for him and his family. I've never met a more narcissistic individual in my entire life. It seems to me that he has utter disregard for anyone other than himself and those in his very close-knit family. Imagine if the people surrounding you, if you were a team leader, were all being sent to prison for felony after felony. That team leader would be removed immediately. And we're not doing it to him. We're listening to all of these horrible excuses while he's hired the people about why they are so competent and so respected. And then as they are convicted of these felonies, oh, I have nothing to do with them. Oh, I didn't know him that well. The exact opposite. And we're not holding this person accountable for the hypocrisy in his statements, never mind his actions. And I don't think there is any doubt in any rational, objective person's mind that there is some odd connection between Trump and Putin. Whether it's just this sycophantic way in which Trump wants to be him or respects the power that Putin has, or more, whether or not it is financial, something very, very direct, and it's Russian oligarchs' money who bought his properties in Florida for tens of millions of dollars more than they're worth. Deal after deal after deal that is not just, wow, it's a businessman, I've made some money, but suspect legally, likely criminal. And I don't understand how we accept that. Yes, he was voted into office, but he is still supposedly not above the law. Although I don't know that that's the case. It appears to me as if he is above the law. He certainly believes he is. And it doesn't seem to me like it's getting any better. I'm off-put by who the man is. I'm off-put by the way in which he represents us as a well-traveled person in the world. I know that we are perceived more negatively by most people than we ever were prior to his representing us. And when I think about our Republican Democratic history and those things for which Republicans once stood and those things in general for which Democrats once stood, there was always common ground with respect to the office of the presidency, with respect to the way in which we engaged the world, wanted to be perceived by the world, and this man, Trump, has undermined all of it. None of what he is doing in his role as president support what used to be Republican beliefs. And yet his base, calling themselves Republicans, don't seem to respond to the hypocrisy. They don't seem, those, for example, who are evangelical, don't seem interested in or bothered by the idea that he's so crass, that he's such a blatant cheater in his marriages. I don't think those are the most important things with respect to running our country either. But I'm not an evangelical Christian who often calls people to the carpet for not being the way they want them to be, except in this case. So the hypocrisy is terrible from my perspective, and I don't support him. I don't like what he's done, and I think he is becoming more and more dangerous as days pass. Hey, you! Yeah, you! Watching the video, you thought it was over. No, you got a job to do. Click the like button and subscribe right below. Come on, get on it now! And feel free to comment. Go ahead, tell me how arrogant I am. Tell me how much you can't stand this or that. I'll listen. Comment away.